Hi, friends. I am Marie Woods, founder of Life Above Foundation, your host, a professional counselor, family and marriage therapist, and a wholeness life coach. Welcome to Relationship Real Talk, the podcast where we dive deep and tackle the toughest relationship challenges Christians face today. Are you tired of struggling with unforgiveness, past wounds, and conflicts? Feeling lonely or having trouble communicating? Wrestling with trust issues or trying to balance your faith with your relationship goals? Feeling stuck and stagnant in your relationship? You are in the right place. Here at the Relationship Real Talk, we get real and cover a wide range of topics, including relationship anxiety, trauma bonds, infidelity, estrangement, toxic dynamics, dating after divorce, and how to heal from relationship trauma and grow and build healthy and lasting relationships. We're not just about identifying the problems. We're all about finding real, integrated solutions from multiple disciplines and offering professional help from different fields to mend and strengthen your relationships. So, let's get started on this journey together, one honest, heartfelt conversation at a time. And today I have a really special speaker. Her name is Dr. Chonta Haynes. Dr. Chonta, she empowers women to confidently live life with peace and financial security. Through her Amazon best-selling books, coaching programs, and the keynotes, she equips with biblically based resources. From her experience and degrees in engineering, theology, and Christian counseling, she balances logic and faith. Known as the Performance Excellence Transition Coach and the Biblical Money Management Expert. Wow. She simplifies complex problems and creates actionable and effective solutions with sustainable results. So welcome, Dr. Chonta.
Thank you so much for having me here, Marie. I'm glad to be here.
It is my honor to have you on this episode. So before we get started, and I have a question because you are going to talk something really powerful. You're going to deliver some message here. You're going to bring power, empowerment to our listeners today. So I'm all looking forward to it. So before we dive in, Dr. Chonta, would you give us a simple, brief introduction about yourself, your work, and how you relate to the conversation today?
Oh, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Marie. Well, I tell my story this way. I felt like I was flying in the air without an airplane. Like many people, we go flying, but if you don't have that support around you, you feel lost. You feel like you're falling. So COVID had hit and my life was absolutely turned upside down. I went through a devastating divorce, which left me heartbroken. My children grew up and moved out. I lost my job as a theology professor simply because we were not meeting in person. And the doing that gave me purpose was now void. So I didn't know who I was. And I'm sure that other people have felt that way too, that uncertainty. But God wasn't confused in it. And I sat in his waiting room with this uncertainty, with this lack of control, with the crisis, as well as my credentials. And I recognized that I still had a message and a ministry to serve others. And my goal is to help other women see the same thing, because I know that God does not waste any opportunities. There's always a lesson. There's always a purpose. So I realized that what was left was more than what left me. And I understand who I am in God, and that the spiritual foundation is a true key to resilience. So I believe that the crown that we wear, our minds, is our true treasure. So today I get an opportunity to empower women to confidently, like you said, live life on their terms to the fullest, not playing small, but I fight for those that are waiting to hear, experience, and transform, because each of us shows up authentically with what God has placed on the inside of us. So whether transitioning through a devastating loss or moving intentionally toward fulfilling a dream, I help you reframe your story, reinvent yourself, and reimagine your future.
Wow. Once you open your mouth, I can feel that the confidence, the power comes out. So, cannot wait to dive into the conversation with you. So, today, Dr. Shanta, her topic is crowned, unleash your inner queen. Your inner queen. What a topic. So, let's get started. As you were talking about, your personal story, your experience, and by the way, thank you for sharing that. And you mentioned the three terms. So let's just dive into what you mentioned about what was a reframe. Reframe.
Reframing your story.
So
Yes.
yeah, reframe your story, and then we go from there. So tell us when the things happen to you, the losses, the heartbreakings, and all the stuff, and how you go from there, reframing your life experience, your story.
Oh, excellent. This is an excellent question. Here's the thing. When I talk about unleashing your inner queen, many of us are playing small. When we talk about relationships, we think that we can compartmentalize, but it affects us no matter where we are. The emotional intelligence that we have, the spiritual intelligence that we have, all of that works together. So sometimes when we find out that we're not doing so well at work, it's because something at home is broken. But when I talk about reframing your story, what I recognize is that a lot of women are allowing outside influences to tell them who they are. When you reframe a house, you set boundaries. So the frames then identify where the bathroom goes, the bedroom, the kitchen, all of those things are located. But in reframing, we move things around. So the biggest thing, though, that we have to move is our thinking. See,
Mm.
God has a plan for us, and we know it's good because that's what the word says. We see to the corner, but he sees around it. We only see to the hill, but he sees on the other side. So reframing recognizes that life is not happening to you, but it's happening for you. It might not feel like that at the moment, but detours do lead to greater destinations. Pain does lead to purpose. So when you change your view and you see the collateral beauty, not just the damage, you can move forward. So you recognize that our Father in heaven is truly a provider and he's a protector, and we don't need somebody else. We might want them. So we lean into God's wisdom. We learn to then, what, like I say, adjust our crowns because we know we're fearfully and wonderfully made. In reframing our story, we understand who we are, we understand our worth, and then we add tax, like I like to say it.
I love this reframing because the old story, what happened, like what you said to us, that's where I feel people got stuck in, and they stay in that old story and have this repetitive thoughts over and over and over again. It really doesn't take them to anywhere, right?
Right. Yeah,
So
we talk about looking at a car. You use the car as an illustration. We look in the rear view mirror at the past and we forget it's so small. It's just a small little piece, but the front windshield is so huge. There's so much more that's ahead of us. So what we have to do, as I say, is we have to think positively about what happened in the past. What was it? What did I like about that person? What didn't I like? What did they do? And a lot of times we romanticize about the past. And it really wasn't romantic. I've had people who have been physically abused. We see that, right? And we say, no, run away from that. You need to get to a safe place. But we don't see the verbal abuse. We don't see the manipulation. We don't see, somebody that has just been really bullying us. All of those are still just as bad. But find out, what was the positive? Did you get away from it?
mhm.
What did you learn about yourself? Did you find out that there was something in your past that was allowing you to complete those cycles over and over again, that you didn't value who you were? So, see, my suggestion is that I tell people to journal who they are, look for their strengths, your skills, your talents, find that collateral beauty. So that way you can regain your passions and know what God has called and wants you to be. So when you lean into those strengths, and you follow that path to purpose, you can ask, you can research, you can assess your natural, your motivational, your spiritual, your ministerial gifts that you've been given, and recognize that you truly are fearfully and wonderfully made. You adjust your crown and you tap into your true identity. So it's an inward focus, but it allows you to see yourself clearly through the eyes of the cross.
Mm. Wow, that covers a lot when you were speaking. So let me back up a little bit, just unpack a little bit. So
Mhm.
I got the crown. The crown, literally, you were saying is the mindset, the thoughts process, right? So for us, the Bible said that renew our mind, be transformed by renewing our mind, perfectly fit. I mean, this crown. And I wonder, as you were saying, reframing our story, our thoughts, like you mentioned about like a furniture, we have to, readjust the position. Our thoughts, we have to we have to reorganize and realign with God's purpose and will in our lives.
That's right.
So yes. So as this podcast is about relationship, so I want to just want to ask you to, how the person after divorce, right? We're talking about a women after divorce, and
Mhm.
how can we relate to ourselves or with God or with other people in this process, and help us to reorganize our thoughts. Um,
Yeah, that is a big part. Like when I went through my divorce, I'm not like everybody else. I know that, God showed me that. My first thought was, one, I didn't want the divorce. My spouse just decided he just didn't want to be married anymore. And so 1 month shy of 30 years, it was like, what? What do you mean? That's my whole life kind of thing. And so we take into account that rejection and we feel like, what did I do wrong? What could I have done better? Where do I go now? Oh, my life is horrible. And I see a lot of women that'll keep looking back over their shoulders or looking at their ex-spouse and, oh, he's with the other woman that he cheated me with, and they're living their best life and I'm over here with nothing. That's because you're focusing on the wrong thing. What did you learn? And you have to recognize that God doesn't waste, like I said, anything. So what's the lesson in it? When I talk about collateral beauty, not just the damage, don't look at all of the ruins around you. What beauty is there? There's always something good. Oh, I learned that I really had a friend over here, or I learned who not to trust. Those type of things. What character traits do I really look for? What is going to help me move to the next level? Was that person really for me, or was I just settling and surviving through it and not really thriving? When you figure out all of those things, you're right. The Bible tells us in Romans 12:2, it says that we are going to renew our mind. We have to renew our mind. We don't conform to this world, but we are transformed by the renewing of our mind, which means that we go to that next level head first. So, a lot of times we try to do and do and do and do, and it's not that. If you don't get your thoughts right, that's why I said you take that focus. God, how do you see me? And show me me. Show, we say, search me and know me, right? That's what we say in 139 Psalm. Search me and know me. No problem. He does. He knows what he has planned for you. He knows where he wants to take you. He knows who you're supposed to influence and impact. But we get so caught up in, oh, what this person thought about me.
mm,
Well, I say it this way. When you know what you're bringing to the table, you won't allow someone to treat you like a napkin.
mm. Wow. Wow. That's a big statement there. So what I'm hearing from you is that after the divorce or breakup, and we have to re-examine this relationship, not in the way you mentioned about romanticize the person who's
Romanticizing.
done damage or harm or abandon you or divorce you, and re-examine the relationship, put it in the context of, what is God's doing in this? What
Mhm.
is his purpose behind of this? I mean,
Yeah,
even this what happened to us, yeah, it is painful
it
and
is.
hurtful. But
Yeah, it's fearful, it's painful. You're absolutely right. And nobody wants to sugarcoat it, but you don't want to stay stuck. And staying stuck says that I'm going to wallow, or as we would say, I'm going to have my own pity party. I'm blowing up the balloons, I'm cutting the cake. I'm just going to have a pity party. And too many women stay there. And I don't want them to be in that quicksand. And so what you have to do, like, they'll come to me like, yeah, when you go through a divorce, oh, you go through a divorce attorney, right? Now, I don't take the place of a divorce attorney, but you go to a divorce attorney and they're going to sit there the whole time that you're crying. Oh, I can't believe they did this to me. Oh, and they're handing you tissues, $400 an hour. And you're just like, okay, that's not the way to go. I tell women, and one part that I do that's a little differently is I add the financial piece, because 90% of women that go through divorce end up in poverty. And I said, I'm not going to let that happen on my watch. So we have to think financially, not emotionally. What's going to be the best outcome for me? Where do I go from here? What is it going to look like? Let me set those things up. If you've got children that are a part of that, you want to make sure you're taking care of your kids too. So there's a lot to consider, but you have to consider you. You have to heal. And many times we don't take the time to heal. We start badgering ourselves. We play that tape over and over in our minds that goes, I was a bad person. Oh, I didn't handle this particular conflict right. Oh, I didn't do that one right. And I say, nope, that's why I said journal your strengths. Too many people are already going to tell us about our weaknesses. Journal your strengths so that you can walk in that. Hey, I'm good at being able to give you the word. I'm good at being able to solve problems. I'm good at this. This is what God has called me, has really equipped me and given me the talent and the skill sets to do. If I look at that, then I realize, okay, he might have left for the 20% and I brought 80. All right. Or I said he got 5%. I got the 95. So he missed out, and so you reframe it from that standpoint. I'm not going to look at what other people are thinking. I'm going to look at what God says about me. When I do that, then I can move forward. I can get out.
That's so important. Not my past or other people define who I am as a divorced woman, but rather than put as a woman in the context of the relationship with God first, who He says I am.
Yes.
To restore that perspective view of ourselves. Then also you mentioned about a very important thing, that when women are going through divorce, and sometimes it can be traumatizing, and they have very narrow view, just focus on their ex or husband, and particularly negative things happen to them, and who their ex is with, like what you mentioned about this. So you bring this framework to, hey, look at this aspect of your life. Hey, look at this part of your life. You have to balance, to help the brain to think of things, in different angle, different ways, rather than just focus on one thing, ruminating on a one thing, and yeah, that people get stuck. And
Well, let me say this, Marie, because I'm sure that there are some people out there that are listening going, oh, but there's nothing good, you know, because we can easily say that. And that's not true. I had this one client and we got on the phone. And when we started the call, she was like really down, honestly. She had a kid. She was like, I don't have the finances. I got to sell the house. I got to clean it up to sell it. He's going to get this money and he's off having a good time. And I said, okay. So her countenance was low. And, others might be in that position. And I said to her, what good, just like I said to you, what good can you find in it? She goes, oh, I can't find anything. I said, well, okay, did he snore? She said, yeah. I said, you don't have to listen to that anymore. I said, was he controlling? She said, yeah, he was. I said, you don't have to deal with that anymore. And she said, you're right. And I can stretch out in my entire bed now. I don't have to worry about that. I can paint the walls whatever color I want.
yeah.
It's and instantly she was her whole attitude changed. So that's what I'm encouraging women to do is, if you find that one little piece, it can be in a sea of thistles, one little flower, and you focus on that and you say, okay, but I don't have to deal with that. I don't have to have somebody belittling me. I don't have to have someone that's not encouraging me. I don't have to feel disappointed because they didn't show up. You say, now I don't have to worry about that. All of a sudden your attitude changes and you're like, okay, let me find out who is supporting me. Let me find out who is encouraging me. That's one way of reframing your story, no matter what's happening to you.
Mm. Yeah, that's so good. So good. And that's why you have been doing this coaching for so long, that someone just need a person like you to work alongside them, to pull back the curtain, to take away the veil. Say, hey, can you see the reality? Can you see this, different angle? And
I
so
didn't start doing this until after my divorce. I would have never thought God was going to move me into this position. He
mm,
had given me all of these tools that I wasn't using because I didn't even know that they were there. And then for me to be able to relate to another woman like that, they look at me and they go, "What do you mean you were married for almost 30 years and you dated for 6 years before you got married? That's your whole life." You're absolutely right. Now, could I have stayed in the, oh, my life is over and I've wasted all this time? I could have stayed there, or I could do something with it. And I said, I always say your agitation should turn into compensation. Let me get paid for the pain you put me through. Like, it's like the best thing you can do is to
wow,
take what you have been given and make the lemonades, like they say, like,
I
bring me
love
the,
that.
keep
Uh,
it going.
Then you get paid for what you inflate. What's that you say?
Yeah.
I never heard that before, but that's a classic. Another thing I heard from you earlier was that after divorce, and the women should shift their focus from their spouse, their partner, to themselves,
Yes.
because they lost themselves in a relationship. Many of us.
Yes, and that's part of that reinventing yourself that I talk about. I
Yeah.
recognize that after the divorce, I didn't like my eggs scrambled. I liked them fried hard, but I had made them for so long for everybody else, the way everybody else wanted, we lose sight of who we are. So just like Julia Roberts in Runaway Bride, when she was trying to figure out, how do I like my eggs? Because I just kept adapting to other people. That's what we end up doing. So in that reinventing ourselves, that's when we really take stock of what do we like to do.
Mm.
I recognize, and I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, God reminded me of the weight that I carried. I was asking him for clarity on what was blocking my next level of success. And I'm like, okay, well, when it's something when God speaks to you as soon as you ask him, right? I thought to myself, everyone could do what I had done. But what he showed me was that God is everything, but Sunday is not. And some people only put him in a box on Sunday. I didn't. But God had gifted me to teach, and that meant I was going to be studious. That means I was going to dive into the word, because as soon as my ex asked for the divorce, I did a Bible study on the Proverbs 31 woman. I was like, okay, let me pick apart, see what I was doing wrong, just like everybody else. But I did it in a different way. And I recognized I had this background. But God's word is the sword of the spirit. And we talk about that, but it's an arsenal that we have to use, but we have to use the right weapon against the enemy.
Mm.
I know what those things are. And like I said, we go head first, we change, we metamorphosis head first. I didn't realize the weight that I carried. And he showed me, hey, I've given you this, I've given you that, I've given you that. And so when you take stock and say, well, who am I, God, that you have created me to be? I have to recognize in reinventing myself that some versions of me have expired.
Mm.
We have to bury parts that are no longer valid. Okay, I don't do that anymore. That's not me. That was an older version of me. That was a 17-year-old me. But
Mm.
then there was parts that we have to reinvigorate and reignite.
Yeah.
So these are the passions that we have. We have to bless them and give them new life and new energy. And then there are others that we bestow or bringing impact and influence to the lives of others. So the question becomes, what do I need to bury? What do I need to bless? And what do I need to bestow on others?
Wow, this sounds like a rediscovery journey after the disorientation and the normality, the normal, so quote unquote normal life being taken away. Now what?
Now what?
Now what? Yeah. So it's a journey of exploration, rediscovery, who we
Mhm.
are as a women, and reposition ourselves. And like what you said, unleash the inner queen. So for us to discover that a tremendous value God has in our lives as a queen, we have to discover that, right? To take a time to re.
Sometimes it's just looking back and saying, what did I dream long time ago? I
Mm,
forgot I love to dance, in the middle of that. I'm like, I mean, I like dancing. It's fun. Like now I'm trying to exercise to lose a little bit of extra weight, right? Hey, let me put on a dance video. I'm going to do that and I don't feel like I'm working out. But you have to figure out what you like. And it's hard, especially if you've got kids and now they're grown up and they're gone. You're like, well, I spent so much of my life pouring into them. What do I do now?
right.
And I think eventually, maybe every 10 years or so, we kind of go through this. But if we've been doing it for years and we haven't taken, or re-looked at who we were, we're lost. I like going to the spa. I like massages. I love doing those things. Do I want to do them by myself all the time? No. Hey, let's do a spa retreat. And I would create these spa retreats and organize them. And it was like, okay, I like doing that. But it just really depends. Everybody is uniquely created.
Mm,
And we have to recognize that you had that dream. Stop playing small. Whatever dream you had as a little girl, it's still coming to fruition. God says he's going to give us the desires of our heart. They
mm.
line up with his word. And so we have to go back and reinvent. I call it reinventing. It could be, hey, I go back and find myself again. Where did you leave her? You know?
Mm. Wow,
It's
so much so, I'm hearing you from you that it's the older relationship has gone, okay? It's gone. So for us to be able to move on and then move beyond, as we were talking about this earlier. So now we move to the third point. The first one is reframe your story. The second one is reinventing yourself, right? Now we
Mhm.
move to the third one that is reimagine your future. So help us to build this framework, the mindset help us to how can we step into the future and build a new relationship with our future.
Yeah. So I say not only, let me rephrase that again for you, for the audience. We don't just when we reframe our story, we're recognizing that our approval is not based on someone else's opinion, but it only comes from above. So I've changed my thought process. When I reinvent myself, I get back to who God created me to be for such a time as this. And I'll allow my voice to be heard. And that's the biggest thing that we get out of reinventing. But when we go to reimagining our future, we have to recognize that the Bible says that our latter is going to be greater, our future is brighter than our past. But in order for us to reimagine it, that means we have to see it, right? So I recently did a teaching on vision, and I used the illustration of wearing glasses because I've probably worn glasses most of my life. And I asked the question, what distorted your view? Some were rained on, some were fogged up, some were smudged, dirty, wrong prescription, or just plain dark. But just because life happened and it does not look like you expected, does not mean that you cannot accomplish, achieve, or succeed. So I say, water a garden of future promises, not just one of regret. So let me tell you how I look at it. Um, I had asked the Lord why I had the crosses to bear that I did, and we all have our own crosses. Nobody wants a divorce. Nobody wants to endure the death of a child. Why the heartache? Why the pain was my question to him. And what he revealed was that I was uniquely designed to carry those crosses, uniquely created to guide others through. So when life unravels or changes, we need to pivot. And that's what adjusting our crown really is. We're walking in that true wealth. So I recognize that we still have opportunities that we can grasp hold of because our future is bright. And the way we do that is by asking God, hey, let me get alone with you, Lord. Show me the keys, the tools, the wisdoms for me to take that next step to arrive at the destination that you have planned for me. So he created us, like I said, for such a time as this. And we recognize that sometimes we're going to have to be uncomfortable in it. We're going to have to be vulnerable in finding out what our future plan is going to be. We might have to develop some skills. So I say pray for the direction and the right advisors or mentors to lead you along the way. My thought is, or my belief is that if you have privately procured community, that it's going to be the best thing to move you from one point to the next. It has to then be led by a person who is emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually connected enough to take you, right? So you can be talked off an emotional ledge, but you've got to know why. And I believe that that spiritual support that we need is what's going to get us to that future, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you particularly talking about the spiritual connection, spiritual support. This is spiritual community. Um, I'm reminded that we are spiritual beings and
Yes.
walk on earth with, we are created, by God in the spirit, in the soul, in the body. But so much so we neglect the spiritual part of us, and which is really important, very important for us to live in the eternal purpose and carry out God's mission. So as you were talking about, revision or reimagine, and I thought about this word came to my mind, faith. For us to step into our future, we have to do it with faith. And
Yes.
yeah, would you like to speak a little bit more on that?
When I say God has a great plan for us, we'll go quickly to Jeremiah 29:11, right? I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you for good, not for evil, to give you an expected end, to give you that hope. Well, we're supposed to be prisoners of hope. And many times when somebody has doused our flame, stepped on our glasses, we don't see ourselves the way we're supposed to, we lose hope, and we shouldn't. So, hope deferred makes the heart sick. So we say, no, I need to get my hope back. How do I do that? God, your word reminds me of what you have promised me, that you would not have brought me this far just to leave me. You said that, you're never going to leave the righteous forsaken nor a seed begging bread. So God, I'm counting upon that. Whether it's affirmations that I need to do just to declare what God's word says, to receive those promises, I have to be able to see what God sees. How do I do that? I get in his presence. That's that spiritual side. That's what's different than what the world says. Because the world will tell you quickly, oh, you're dried up. You're 60 years old. You're not going to amount to much. Your life is over. You didn't do it at 30. Oh, well, it's too late. That's not what God's word says. You can look at Abraham. All right. We start off at 80. I don't have a kid till I'm 100. A puff of smoke. There's nothing there. And it's like, God, you create something out of absolutely nothing. Right. So if he says that your future is brighter, I truly enjoy what I get a chance to do today. I would have never been in this point. I see people change their view. And I had this one client. I had to talk her off an emotional ledge. Okay, so every now and then we have to do that. And she was just so demoralized by what was going on in her life. The ex or soon to be ex was still living in the same house. That is just, I mean, it takes
Stressful.
it to another level. And you've got a kid there too, and you got another one coming back home, and she was just off. It was just horrible. But at the end of our conversation, so I did talk her off that emotional ledge. But at the end of the conversation, I could hear birds chirping in the background because she went outside. She was like, I got to go outside to have this conversation. And it reminded her, and I reminded her of the fact that God says in his word that he takes care of the sparrows and he watches over her too. That was a moment that he was really singing loudly over her. And I must say that the spiritual support group is valuable to navigating seasons of change. And sometimes we don't recognize, we need to hear what God says, and He uses people to get us there, because sometimes we can't hear it ourselves. That's what's important. So the question becomes, what do you have? What does God want you to do? What message have you been uniquely created to share? When you start thinking about that, you start thinking of future things, not of past, not of just the present, but God, where are you taking me? You're singing over me. You're loving me. You're watching me. You're protecting me. You're providing for me. You're going to do all of those things. What do you have for me to do? And if I can't see it myself, then I need to have somebody else who's going to be there to pull me through to that next point.
So good. I remember Bible says, we cannot, I cannot remember exactly words, but it says if we don't have the vision, God's people got lost.
Yep.
Yeah.
Without a vision, the people perish, right? They cast off all restraint, right? But then it also says that we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So when I give somebody else my testimony, they're empowered, they're impacted by that, they're influenced, they're saying, wow, if she did it, maybe I can too. What is she holding on to that I don't see right now? And then when I get that, I'm like, okay, I can go on a little while longer because God is, he's giving me those little tidbits along the way. So he's planting those gardens in front of me, and he says, okay, keep eating this. Be still and know that I am God. Recognize that my hand is not going to be for the enemy, but no weapon formed against you is ever going to prosper. It may look like that. Think about Joseph. What did he do in Genesis 50:20? Hey, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. That's where we have to get to. So we want to have people in our lives that can remind us of that, not keep dwelling us in the past, not, say, oh, well, it's it. You're done. We need someone who is going to pull us up to that next level. And so that's what we're looking for. That's why I say community is the best way to get that, because we can't be our best self by ourselves. Yes, we need to heal. Yes, we need to take time for us and all of that. But to be my best self, I need to get around people who are going to pull me up to that next level.
That's good point. I think it's a good point to wrap up our conversation for today's episode. And so appreciate Dr. Chonta your time. And I think what you do is very valuable. It's helping women really step into their inner queen, step into their destiny, who God called them to be. And that's such an important job that what you're doing. So do you have a last word for our audience today?
Well, first, let me say thank you so much, Marie, for having me here. I really appreciate it. And I started with the story saying that I was flying in this air without an airplane. Well, guess what? Today, I've got the time freedom, the financial freedom, and a fulfilling life. My plane is landed. I believe yours will too. I believe the sky is the limit and the benefits are out of this world. So grab hold on it and let's do it.
That's excellent. So thank you for tuning in and listen to today's episode. I hope you will gain some insights and encouragement from our conversation today. And maybe you can forward a link to friends or family member who you know they might need to hear today's message. So thank you again, and I will talk to you in the next one.